All right. If everybody's good, I'll begin. Kevin and I negate. Carlin 19 explains that U.S. military presence in the Gulf region has deterred Iran and prevented countless disputes among the Gulf Arab states, which is why the chance of deliberate interstate war in the Middle East is at its lowest point in the past 50 years. Unfortunately, affirming destabilizes the region in two ways. Contention one is an Israeli strike. Person 18 explains that Netanyahu feels dependent on a strong American presence in the Middle East to ward off Iran. Stevens 14 reports that while there has been intense speculation about whether Israel will preemptively strike Iran, it has not done so yet because of assurances that the U.S. will protect its interests. However, Goldenberg 15 writes that any significant withdrawal of assets would shake the confidence of Israel. Critically, Freilich 17 warrants that while Israel currently enjoys a de facto U.S. security guarantee, a small change in U.S. support for Israeli interests guarantees profound ramifications for national security. Affirming does just that, as pulling out nearly jeopardizes our military presence in the Arab states, which is viewed as a concession to Iran, jeopardizing Israeli sovereignty. Freilich 17 confirms that this effect empirically. When the U.S. failed Israel on a number of occasions, Israel was forced to take action on its own. Horshig 19 writes that Israeli strikes cause immediate retaliation from Iran, which spirals into regional war throughout the Middle East. Iran-Israeli war would be catastrophic, as Hodges 20 writes that a war would activate Iran's proxies in Yemen, Bahrain, Lebanon, and Pakistan, leaving hundreds of thousands dead and millions of more displaced. The contention, too, is the rise of ISIS and the fall of Kurdistan. Kirkpatrick 19 writes that as many as 18,000 fighters in Iraq and Syria remain active, while Young and Seligman 20 contends an additional 12,000 are at risk of escape from detention centers while suffering under the coronavirus pandemic. Schmidt 19 finds last October that when Trump ordered the withdrawal of the 2,000 U.S. troops in Syria, ISIS greatly expanded its prospects within the region and began to resurge, with Jonas 19 finding that attacks resumed. Just 1 month later, Schmidt 19 reports that Trump was forced to reinstate troops in the region and restart counterterrorism operations, and attacks slowed again. Turok 19 explains that removing U.S. troops from the region allows Turkish forces to fill their place, as the New York Times writes that U.S. forces must get out of the way as Turkey is our ally and will not risk attacking U.S. troops. Norman 19 warns that in Syria, a Turkish troop replacement forced Kurdish troops to abandon the fight against ISIS in hopes of defending themselves against the Turks, who view them as a mortal enemy. In Syria, with a lack of U.S. presence and Kurdish forces distracted battling each other, Brown 19 finds ISIS was able to exploit the reduction in counterterrorism pressure to reconstitute its operations, which is why Rubin 19 writes that Trump's September decision to withdraw troops in Syria promises a revival of the Islamic State. A similar effect would surely be seen in Iraq, as in a February 2020 report, the Pentagon confirms that without a U.S. troop presence in Iraq, ISIS would likely resurge. Were ISIS to regroup, Underwood 17 finds that battles to reclaim even single cities have previously claimed between 9 and 11,000 civilian lives, with Sands 19 describing ISIS rule as ripe with ethnic cleansing. Not only would Kurdish fighters be unable to fight ISIS without U.S. support, and would instead be drawn into a conflict with Turkey, if the largely outnumbered Kurdish fighters failed to resist the overwhelming Turkish army, the result would be catastrophic. Turek finds that U.S. troop withdrawal in Syria effectively sends a green light to Turkey, allowing them to carry out a long-planned operation against our Kurdish allies, whom they view as racially impure and have sought to erase. Levy 20 explains that this already happened in the Syrian parts of Kurdistan, where the U.S. has pulled out, though the Iraqi areas have held out under continued U.S. troop deployment. In 2016, when Turkey invaded Afrin, Kurdish forces were unable to hold out, and as a result, 180,000 Kurds were displaced from their homes, with the Kurdish population dropping from 85 to 20% and 1.3 million people left in need of dire humanitarian aid. Iden 19 describes 2016's events as one of the modern world's few remaining examples of ethnic cleansing, with nearly all minority inhabitants turned to refugees in favor of racial homogeneity. Burke 19 concludes that statelessness for the Kurds means more than the simple lack of a nation state. It means the lack of basic protection from any of the states they inhabit, which Bramsky 20 confirms that for these current refugees, the current epidemic is analogous to a death sentence because of a lack of health care, risking the lives of the 6 million Kurds remaining in Iraq.
On the email chain, could you send any card that says that he will enter Iraq?
Yeah, or that Turkey wants to enter Iraq?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So whenever the evidence gets there, if you're going to read it or whatever, then you just need to take prep time to read the evidence.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
We'll probably just start a case read then.
That's fine too.
Yeah.
All right. Sent should be arriving soon.
All right. I'll start the case read once the email arrives.
Did you send it to all of us? Because I'm not getting it. You have to like CC all, I think.
Yeah, no, it's
Oh, yeah.
it's reply all. It says message sent.
All right. We'll see.
9:38.
Oh, I got it. Cool.
I just got it too. All right. Is everyone ready?
Yep.
All right. I'll start now. Bridge affirms, and our first contention is Iran. There are 3 ways that continued American presence in the Gulf can lead to a war with Iran. First is tit-for-tat escalation. We are getting dangerously close to pulling the trigger right now. Hussein 20 from The Intercept last month reports that within the Gulf, Iran is raining missiles on American bases as vengeance against the Soleimani strike in January. And in retaliation, the U.S. is conducting airstrikes against Iran-backed militias across the Gulf, setting the stage for a wider confrontation. Ward 20 from Vox magazine contextualizes that Iran is out for blood. They want to avenge their fallen general and look strong in the face of American pressure, meaning that more attacks are inevitable. The problem with this is that Washington has set a red line. If a single U.S. troop is killed by Iran, we will respond with absolute military force that would escalate into an all-out war. Considering 11 soldiers were wounded and almost killed in the last attack, at this rate, conflict is inevitable. Second, it's a regional proxy warfare. Jihad 20 from the Foreign Magazine Affairs indicates that to entrench its influence within the Persian Gulf state, Tehran is fighting a proxy war against the U.S. in Iraq. He writes that Iran intends to turn Iraq into a war of attrition, inflicting tons of damage on America until we back down. Unfortunately, America won't de-escalate. As the New York Times reports that 15 days ago, Washington has declared that if Iran continues its proxy war, America will respond by going, quote, up the food chain and attack the Iranian military directly, which would spiral into conflict. Mali 20 reports that proxy war in Iraq will lead to greater war, finding that even without escalation, it would turn Iraq into the next Yemen with the upwards of 500,000 casualties. Third, the new powder keg. Rivera 17 from the Small Wars Journal explains that the U.S. and Iran have conflicting interests in Bahrain, an island nation in the Persian Gulf. America relies on for Bahrain's strategic position in the Gulf in order to conduct command and control of the region's naval capabilities, stationing our Fifth Fleet there. Whereas Iran needs a country as a Shiite stronghold to have forward influence in the region. Carpenter 19 of the Cato Institute concludes that because of these geopolitical factors, America and Iran will eventually confront each other over control of the country. Cumulatively, American military actions have created 3 hotspots of war inside the region, and the impact is massive. As Goldberg 19 of Harvard University contextualizes, that any war with Iran would last over a decade and be waged across the entire Middle East, collapsing the global economy and costing tens of millions of lives. Our second contention is preventing Chinese aggression. Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Jonathan Lem from Reuters reports that China's massive naval expansion in the South China Sea is making our allies unsure if the U.S. is really there to protect them, with Professor Robert Mearsheimer concluding that without U.S. supporting allies, they will decide to independently challenge China before they get too strong because they believe that the U.S. cannot stop China from conquering them. Luckily, we can fix this issue by redeploying them from the Gulf. A report by the New York University indicates that the U.S. wants to focus resources back to the South China Sea, but can't because it has to keep its naval resources in the Middle East. Affirming enables us to shift naval sources from the Gulf to Asia, doubling our fleet size. Balakrishnan 19 from Duke University indicates that this increased U.S. naval presence in the area would reassure our allies, potentially preventing an all-out war. Our third contention is proxy warfare. Removing America from the Gulf solves proxy warfare in the region. Bazi 17 from the Columbia University explains that American presence emboldens Saudi Arabia across the Middle East because they believe as long as they are backed by the #1 superpower, they cannot lose wars. Comparatively, without America, they are a relatively weak nation. And Nordum 20 from NPR implicates that after Saudi Arabia perceived decreasing U.S. commitment back in December, they began diplomacy to de-escalate their own proxy wars, decreasing bombing in one conflict in Yemen by 80%. However, America ended this shift by restarting our bombing and missile campaign on Iran in January, and just 2 of these proxy wars in the Middle East, Syria and Yemen, have killed 730,000 people, with a report from Johns Hopkins University finding that there are 8 other hotspots in the Middle East that are about to burst into warfare if we don't put an end to Saudi aggression right now. Thus, we strongly urge an affirmative ballot.
Could I see a few pieces of evidence? I guess I'll just send it, but I guess the Harbinger card from the powder keg link, as well as the war journal evidence.
Carpenter? Oh, yeah.
Or something. I heard.
Right?
I think it was Cato. I'm not sure. And let's see. What else do I want to see? I guess that affirming would necessitate doubling the fleet size. I'll see that as well. So just those 3 cards. Did you send the email? Oh, wait. Yeah, no, I didn't get anything yet. Just let me know when you send it.
I just got it.
You did?
I got the first 2 cards, I think, Carpenter and Benaim. Waiting on the 3rd one.
Could you just like text it to me or something? Because my email's really slow for some reason.
Yeah, once they're all here, we'll start prep.
Yeah, sure. Sounds good.
What was the other one you asked for? I thought you just asked for those 2.
I asked for those 2, as well as like we would affirming means doubling the fleet size in the
I
South
think
China
there's
Sea.
2 cards to that.
Yeah. The Benaim is
There's
that
2 cards.
affirming moves our fleet, and then doubling is based on the size of.
Yeah, it's Bala Krishnan, I guess.
Then I guess I'll see the first one.
That affirming means moving our fleet.
Yeah.
That's sent already.
Okay, cool.
Oh, it is?
Yeah,
Okay.
the email's here.
Harrison, can you just like text it to me or something? For some reason, I'm not getting it.
Yeah, sure.
All right, are y'all gonna take prep now? Cross first.
Yeah.
I just got it. All right, we're gonna start prep now.
All right.
Okay, what is the card? Harrison, mute yourself.
I am. I think it's you, Kevin. You're in the main Discord. All right, prep stop. Cool. You guys ready for cross?
Cross
You guys ready
time,
for
right?
cross? Cool.
Yeah.
I think you might want to mute yourself, Kevin.
Sorry.
All
Y'all
good?
at first.
All right,
Yep.
for sure. So when was the last like U.S. strike on Iran? Last U.S. airstrike on your first like sub point about tit for tat?
I mean, they've been like progressively doing just military airstrikes in the past, like.
Yeah, no,
month.
I'm just asking, like when was the last one, the most recent one?
I don't know what the most recent one was. I think I know there's like one like a week and a half ago or something like that.
Okay. You have a question?
Sure. So you say is that if the U.S. leaves, then Israel is going to feel like they don't have anyone to back them up, and they're going to attack Iran, right?
Yeah.
Right. So why would they attack Iran if their biggest defender leaves them?
Yeah, so the argument is pretty simple, right? Israel, like Netanyahu specifically, feels that he needs the US in the region constantly to offer deterrence against Iranian expansion.
Okay.
And he feels like he just perceives that if the US, his greatest ally, pulls out of the region, the US is no longer deterring against Iranian expansion and that he has to intervene himself.
But you say that he believes that he needs the U.S. to keep himself safe and defend them. So why would he have the incentive to outwardly go towards starting conflicts if he no longer has his defender with him?
No, so the argument is that he feels that the U.S. is like his line of defense right now, but if the U.S. pulls out of the region, he feels like he has to defend himself.
Yeah,
on
I'm
his
saying
own.
like
That's
along
what the
that
Stevens
logic.
evidence says, that the
Yeah,
reason
I'm
that
saying like along that logic, right? If the U.S. is a protector and they lose their protector, why would you want to start a war? Like if you can make an analogy, right? Like let's say
because
you have like
it's
a
not
armor,
the
you
way
take
that
away this
Israel
dude's
views it
armor,
is
he's not going to start a war.
Yeah, exactly. So the way that Israel views it is not as starting a war. They view it as just curtailing Iranian expansion. The problem is that they misunderstand Iranian responses to their strikes. We say that it would escalate to a war. However, that's clearly not Israel's intention.
How do you know that it's going to escalate to a war, but Israel doesn't? Like, I feel like they have foreign policy advisors.
That's our Horseshoe evidence that it would escalate, right? Like, obviously,
no, I'm saying why would Israel do an attack that they don't think will start to a war, but you say it starts to a war? I'm pretty sure Israel would know that any kind of strike on Iran.
I mean, it's not me saying it; it's Horseshoe, right? And we would say that, like, obviously, Israel thinks that their attacks can be just like small things that are just enough to deter Iran. However, Iran perceives that as more aggressive than just a small act.
So why is an entire country, according to you, dumb enough to believe something that's absolutely out of like their mind, and your evidence indicates that it's
dumb enough? The fact is that it's like try or die for them, right? They have to do something to deter.
That's not what you said. What you told me is that Israel thinks a military strike on Iran will not escalate into war, and I'm asking why they don't think that.
They don't think that that's the most likely thing to happen. However, like if that happens, that's worth it because the other alternative in Netanyahu's eyes is Iranian encroachment. Yeah, that's cross.
All right.
1 second, sorry, my computer's. Can y'all hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, you're good.
All right, awesome. All right, great. All right, I'm gonna go start with an overarching response on their case, and then I'll actually give me a bit of prep. Harrison, let's go to the other chat. Wait, sorry. I was looking at the Bahrain evidence. Can you
Yeah.
is there a card that says we're gonna start conflict in the status quo?
There's a card that says it's a hotspot for conflict. I can send you that. For war.
Is that the link evidence that you use, I guess?
Yeah, Carpenter says it's going to happen, and the card says it leads to war. If you want the other card.
Oh, so okay, so Carpenter is the link evidence, right?
Yeah, or it's going to start.
Okay, great. All right, sounds good. Then I'll run a tiny bit more prep. All right, is everyone good? Harrison,
We
I
have a
think you gotta
tech problem. We have a tech problem.
Just let me know when I can start.
Sorry, my Zoom just crashed for a second, but I'm back.
Do you need to restart or are you good? Hello?
Yeah, we're good.
You're good? All right. So I'm gonna start with an overview, like an overarching response, and then go down their case, respond to their case. Is everyone ready? Okay, sounds good. Sorry. Let's start with an overview on their case. Brands 19 explains that US withdrawals are likely to be followed by hasty re-engagements. For example, after the US left Iraq in 2011, the state nearly collapsed. ISIS surged to prominence in an emergency military intervention, which has now lasted 5 years, was needed to repair the damage. That means that all the benefits from affirming are temporary at best, but in the long term would require a longer US re-intervention to actually solve the problems that rise up again. But now let's start in their contention one about tit-for-tat escalation with Iran. Really critically, the Wall Street Journal writes this year that the US and Iran have actually backed off of conflict, and Trump said he wouldn't attack. The Iranian attacks that they cite that are going to lead to some doomsday scenario were actually calibrated to avoid escalation. That's why tensions rose in January, but haven't risen for the past 2 months. That's terminal defense as to why all war with Iran won't happen in the status quo. Nobody wants war, and don't let them gain access to this like one American death leads to an all-out war. No, neither side wants that. And we'd say Iran knows that one death leads to an all-out war, which is why they wouldn't kill anyone. But either way, the conflict is super unlikely right now because no one wants war. But their second link is about regional proxy wars. But we would contend that proxy wars actually get way worse in their world because Iran can actually expand. As CNN 20 explains, Iran will continue to expand and will ultimately have more regional power if the US pulled troops out of Iraq. And this is also empirically backed up, as Skahil 19 explains, that when the US withdrew the military from Iraq in 2011, Iran actually filled the vacuum by spreading into Iraq. We'd say that Iranian proxy wars, while they are a problem right now, get way worse in their world because Iran views this as affirming as a US concession in the region, and for them to be able to start other proxy wars with less powerful actors in the region. But now onto their link about Bahrain. I would really urge you to call for this evidence that they call for, the Carpenter evidence. It basically says that Bahrain is simply a hotspot in the region, but it's not actually devolving into war anytime soon. It's just an assumption that it's one point of conflict. Don't let them gain access to this unique scenario. It's just like a potential hotspot down the line. But we would say because Iran doesn't actually want to start conflict in Bahrain right now, it's not going to happen, especially considering the fact that they're like really rattled by coronavirus right now. It's not going to happen. But now onto their second contention about the Chinese aggression. A few problems here. Their evidence is about the National Defense Strategy, or NDS, right? Saying that affirming means we transition to addressing China, shift away from the Persian Gulf towards China. But we would say that's not allowed in public forum because we would say that affirming just means we pull out of Gulf region. They can't assume that we would all of a sudden address China. But let's say even that we would address China, right? We would say this is actually unnecessary because Harner 14 finds that the narrative of expansionist China is a myth, and China is actually exerting a great deal of restraint to maintain stability in the South China Sea. There's no conflict breaking out in the region. But most importantly, they never actually implicate why Chinese aggression in the South China Sea is actually that bad. We would say the only chance of war is in a world of a pivot towards China, as Glazer 13 finds that a pivot to China would trigger massive anti-American sentiment, strengthening Chinese nationalist voices, calling for military countermeasures. That's also empirically backed, as Claire 13 finds that when Obama began to pivot, China retaliated by increasing their naval presence in the region, bolstering their naval capabilities, and bought more advanced weapons from Russia. This has two implications. First, it serves as terminal defense, because even if the US increased their presence, like, it won't actually counter China. But second of all, Winnemeyer writes that an arms race will pursue in the region, which leads to war. That's the only way war breaks out in the region. Their last contention is about proxy warfare. They say Saudi is emboldened right now, and when we pull out, that's when diplomacy takes place. There are 2 prompts here. First, Rance 18 writes that Saudi's ambition, recklessness, and invasion of Yemen seems to have been motivated by the perception that the Obama administration was no longer committed to constraining Iran, so the kingdom would have to handle Iran themselves. That means whenever the US modestly pulls back, the Saudis actually see conflict. But second of all, we could turn it, because Goldenberg 15 writes that US security assurances are critical to preventing Saudi Arabia from actually starting to proliferate, leading to a nuclear proliferation in the region that could go nuclear.
We're going to take a little prep starting now.
Sounds good.
I think that's all the prep that we're going to use. That was 30 seconds. AR, you have to unmute yourself here, I think. All right, we have a tech problem again on AR Zoom.
Wait, sorry, what's happening right now?
Oh, we have a tech problem.
Sorry, we had my Wi-Fi has been iffy, but you can count it as our prep time for when we were absent. It was like 10 seconds.
Sure.
So
So
if
how
you-
much prep did you use?
So if there are technical issues, then nobody usually takes prep, and then we just count it as technical issues, and it's not out of anybody's time.
Yeah, okay. We used 30 seconds.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Okay.
And I'm sorry for the technical. All right.
Sorry, hello?
Yeah. Is everyone ready?
Okay, I'm good.
Can I have a thumbs up? All right, cool. I'm going to start on my case and the rebuttal you just heard. Starting off on the rebuttal you just heard, before we go deep into the nuance of the debate, it is very important to understand the context behind what is happening in the Middle East today. What Fisher in 2018 from the New York Times tells you is that right now, the Middle East is split between Saudi Arabia and Iran in a regional Cold War. And as a result, we're seeing proxy wars all across the Middle East between these two nations, with Fisher concluding that in the future, we are on a trajectory of continued escalation, which will leave the Middle East a bunch of failed and failing states. We get a couple responses to our case. The first one is that the US will re-engage back into the Middle East if we pull out. I'll contend this isn't true, because first of all, recognize that the only reason we re-engaged in the first place was because of conflict that happened when we pulled out. Insofar as we prove there is less conflict when we pull out, we have no reason to re-engage. Second of all, I will contend the US has alternate priorities to where to shift its military, such as, for example, like Latin America or the South China Sea, where we have other interests such as in the Mediterranean. So I will contend we won't go back to the Middle East. Third of all, recognize when we came back, it was a very different political climate in America. Right now, there's heavy U.S. support against the U.S. going back. America's a very war-weary nation. We're not going to go back to the Middle East. But then let's go for the important issue inside today's round. Is going to be attention on proxy war. The Bazi evidence that right now American presence in the Middle East emboldens Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia believes that when they are backed by the world's #1 superpower, they can do whatever they want and there are no consequences at all. Comparatively, when America pulls out, Saudi Arabia believes that it's a weak nation and no longer stands up to Iran. This is historically proven, because we tell you last year in December when America pulled out temporarily, what ended up happening is we saw Saudi Arabian bombing in these proxy wars that are devastating the Middle East decreased by 80%, and them actually engaged with diplomacy with Iran for the first time in decades. We get two responses. The first one is that Saudi Arabia feels more aggressive when it's not committed against Iran. Well, the Yemen war that they're talking about in the example is talking about 2014, which is a long time ago. We tell you Saudi Arabian foreign policy has changed. They have a new leader now, and they depend on America for emboldening and action against Iran. But in second of all, they say that Saudi Arabia will proliferate and get a nuclear weapon. That's not true. The Washington Post tells you that Saudi Arabia has no capability to do so. They don't have the industrial base or the manufacturing base or the scientists in order to do so. They can't even have the capability to manufacture a car. They're not building a nuclear weapon. Let's go into their case. Their first contention is all about Israeli preemptive strikes, but there's a couple reasons why this won't happen. The first one is that political support in Israel is low for the current Netanyahu right-wing government. He literally almost doesn't have the political capital in order to execute a first. His people will definitely not want him to do so, and he's right now facing a challenge for re-election. Second of all, records that Israel will only want to do a first strike if Iran is aggressive, but Iran is only aggressive because America is there. What 2C18 from Foreign Affairs magazine tells you is that Iran only lashes out because they perceive America as a foreign power who's coming in against their interests, and they specifically that the only reason that hard politics are winning elections is because of American military presence. So if we pull out and Iran tempers down its aggression, Israel has no need for a first strike. But then what Mazzetti from the New Yorker indicates is that Israel has considered the first strike many times in history. But the reason that they haven't done these first strikes is because America always reeled them back. We said, no, don't do this first strike, don't cause regional tension. But Mazzetti specifically concludes that right now under the Trump administration, when America's a lot more aggressive against Iran, Israel's perceiving us as giving them the green light. And it makes sense. They're not going to strike Iran without the backing of America because they don't want to get dragged into a war that they can't win. Also, they say that Israel wants to deter Iran. Deterring Iran does not mean launching a preemptive strike. They have to tell you why bombing Iranian militias or Israel building up its military necessarily leads to a war. Let's go into their contention too.
Okay, hey, wait,
it's only saying Turkey wants to Iraq. Yeah.
So there's so much technical issues that you froze for the last 10 to 15 seconds.
Yeah, my last response that I heard was that the Mazidi evidence.
Oh, okay. So 15 seconds? Wait.
Yes, but I'm just telling you that's like the last thing that I got, you know.
If you want, we can resume the rebuttal or we can cut it off there.
Well, I want you to probably, like, because the last 15 seconds, we just couldn't hear anything.
Okay, I have 10 seconds left on my
Okay,
timer.
so I think you should, is everybody okay with him extending it another 10 seconds, like in say 20 seconds? Is that okay?
That's fine.
Does that make sense? Because you need to go back a little bit.
All right.
Yeah.
So, Mazidi evidence?
Yeah, starting at the Mazidi evidence.
Did I get through to Mazidi?
You just started reading Mazidi. So
wait,
you were like half.
Well, from what I heard, it was just like we would never, or Israel would never strike because the U.S. calms them down, and then I sort of like got cut off. Right?
All right, I'll start with explaining Mazidi. Is everyone ready?
Sure.
Starting with Mazidi evidence, they tell you that right now Israel is being emboldened by the Trump administration's actions against Iran in order to strike. It makes sense that Israel wouldn't strike Iran if America isn't there to support them because they don't want to get dragged into a war they can't win. On contention too about ISIS, I would contend that Turkey and Iran can take out ISIS. They have influence in Iraq. Their evidence doesn't say Turkey will go into Iraq because like Iran has high influence in Iraq. I'll contend Turkey won't go in there. The evidence is only specific to Syria. Thus, I strongly urge an affirmative ballot.
All right, cool. You ready for cross?
Yeah.
All right. Can I have the first question?
Sure.
I'll start time now. So what is Iran's goal? Hello?
To repel the United States.
Well, it's to become the regional hegemon, right?
By repelling the United States.
Well, that's certainly part of it.
They
but
only want
you'd
out.
agree with me, right? I'm sorry, the Wi-Fi is really hello? Here, let's stop cross. You there?
I'll call him on his phone.
All right,
I
sure.
don't know what's going on
If
with
he
this.
wants, like, I guess he could potentially turn the camera off. That may help the Wi-Fi issues.
I don't know if the tournament rules allow that.
Give me a
Oh,
second. My computer's not shifting to my hotspot for some reason.
Or just move, like, sit next to your router or something.
No,
Fine.
the problem is,
Oh yeah, I think everyone hear us, so it's clear we're not.
Yeah.
Talking. Yeah.
all right.
Wait, so what's happening right now?
He's trying to switch to a hotspot or something.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, so the main thing is just nobody takes prep during this time, and then y'all have
Yeah.
time to resolve technical issues.
Yeah, for sure. No
All right,
problem.
it should be working now.
Try.
Yeah. All right.
Really sorry about all these technical issues. It should be fixed now because I just my hotspot.
Sounds good.
Yeah. All right. Really sorry.
So I guess like let's just go in with like 20 seconds through cross if that sounds good.
Okay. Yeah.
So I was saying before you cut off. So like, would you agree that like Iran's goal is to like become the regional hegemon?
I would disagree with that. I think that their only regional goal inside the is it in order to repel the United States.
Okay, sure. You can have a question.
Great. So let's talk about the Kurds, right? Where does your evidence say that Turkey would enter Iraq?
Well, we do say that Turkey, empirically, whenever the U.S. backs out, the Turkish troops fill their place. And as they said in your evidence, your response, that Turkey would take out ISIS. So that is
I
like.
said that if Turkey entered Iraq, then they would take out ISIS. But I would contend Turkey wouldn't enter Iraq in the first place because your evidence is specific to Syria, and Iraq is a very different geopolitical landscape.
No. Turkey, like they have Turkish troops that fend against ISIS, and wherever like the U.S. needs them, like because it's like counter-terrorist operations,
no,
they like figure out where.
Like, yeah, but there's a difference between like certain Turkish segments entering Iraq and Turkey doing a full-out invasion of Iraq in order to take out the Kurds.
No. It would be like an invasion of Iraq, like of Kurdish forces, right? It's not invading Iraq, first of all. But
wait, but Kurdish forces.
We would say that if there is, first of all, precedent for this, and if you don't buy this analysis, like we would say, like it's extremely likely for Turkey to fill in because that's what empirically happens when the U.S. troops are removed. And you can like read this evidence on this afterwards.
I mean,
too.
your empirics are based in one country, Syria.
No. It's not just Syria. That's like our empiric, like that's one empiric.
Your empiric is analyzing is Syria, but you can have a question.
Okay. But to the point where you don't like address this in rebuttal, I'd say like it probably is too late. But you can have a.
I say that Iraq is a different geopolitical landscape.
You said Turkey and Iraq would take out ISIS. That's all you said.
No,
but you can have a question.
Turkey would take out ISIS, that Iran would take out ISIS, but that Turkey wouldn't enter Iraq in the first place.
Okay, sure. We can discuss that later. But can I have a question actually?
Yeah, you can.
All right. So you said Saudi Arabia, like in 2014, it was a long time ago. What has really changed?
The crown,
the
leader
Saudis,
changed. The autocrat changed.
No. That's not what I'm asking though. Like Saudi was also dependent on the U.S. in 2014.
Okay. Exactly. That's why they invaded Yemen. Like that's to my point. The U.S. has been in the region for a long time, and that emboldened Saudi Arabia.
No. What happened was the U.S. was pulling out of Saudi Arabia, and that's like they sent that message to Saudi Arabia, and after that, that's when they became super reckless.
So were they dependent on America in 2014 or not?
Of course they were. But when the U.S. signaled to Saudi Arabia that we weren't on their side, that's when the Yemen conflict started, and that's the evidence I read.
Wait, so we signaled to them that we weren't on their side once, and they decided to invade Yemen?
Exactly.
All right, can I see that evidence after this?
Sure. But like, I guess like your evidence is like when American presence wasn't there.
Also, and then the political situation in Saudi Arabia has changed. They have a different leader now. which is why our more recent evidence should be preferred.
No. It doesn't matter if they have a different leader if they still have the same interests and like this relatively the
A
same.
different leader has different interests. Like, it's not the same interests. They're an autocracy.
Explain how this new leader is significantly different from the
way
old
over
crown
time.
prince. Okay, sure. Harrison, do you want to take prep or no?
So hold on a second. So because there's so many like technical issues, I'm going to have to ask all participants, unless you're one of these teams' coaches, to leave the room. So I need to make sure that there's not a strain and give all the participants the best chance. So I need to see my participant, which currently is at 10. That means we have 5 extra people here. You need to go away.
Sorry, did you say the coaches can stay, or should the coaches
If
also
your
leave?
coach, no, if your coach is here, that's fine.
Okay.
But that means though that there should still, my participants should go down to 7 tops. I know some people have more than one coach, but one coach can stay for each team if they're here. So I need to see it go down somehow 1 more, because I still have 8 participants. What are y'all's participants showing as?
Well, Lee Place and Ben Park are both our coaches.
Yeah, but I think one of them is going to leave. I'm not sure.
So why don't we get one to leave? So that way, because if I can't hear y'all and y'all are cutting out, then you cannot make your case. And so that's what they said. Thank you.
All right, so are we good now?
I'm good. So are y'all taking prep?
All right, so
yeah, we're gonna.
Yeah, all right, Harrison.
Okay.
Yeah. So the order judge is going to be starting on their case, just extending my partner's responses, and then I'm going to head to our case on our contention 1 of an Israeli strike and our second sub point about the fall of Kurdistan. Okay. All right. Let's begin at the top of their case on the overview that Kevin reads to you from Brands 19, which says that U.S. withdrawals are often followed by interventions at any sign of conflict revival. What's super important here is they respond with 3 things. First, they say that less conflict when we exit means that we won't re-engage. But what's critical is that Brand doesn't say that like less conflict means that we won't re-engage. What Brand says is that any sign of conflict starting up again means that we'll re-engage. If you give us any offense in this round, that in their world, there will be a slight increase in conflict. If you see even one more ISIS attack, the US will re-engage, meaning that all of their impacts are extremely short-term. Then they say that like America is war weary and will have shifted to like other nations. But critically here, America is not war weary. Trump literally just assassinated Iran's top general, which could have easily escalated to war. We would say that at the end of the day, America is a country which does what it wants in the region and is not afraid to start a conflict. Then on their contention 3 of like proxy wars and their contention 2 of the South China Sea. What's super critical here, and the easiest way to sign your ballot right here in first summary, Judge, is our Glazer turn, which goes cold dropped in his rebuttal. We tell you that a pivot to forces in the East Asia region, increase U.S. troops there, would enhance the Chinese hardliner narrative, which is super problematic because our Whittemire evidence says that that would cause an arms race in the region, escalating to regional war. The only way that you see a war break out in the South China Sea is in their world when the Chinese hardliner narrative is enhanced because U.S. troops pivot there. That's unresponded offense, Judge, and it's the easiest way to sign your ballot. It's way too late to respond to this. But then on their thing about Saudi Arabia, there's another turn. That's Bloomberg, which says that Saudi involvement in proxy wars is caused by them perceiving a lack of U.S. commitment. Empirically, this was true when Obama pulled out in 2011. Saudi started the war in Yemen. They say that like this is outdated and foreign policy has changed, but the problem is that it's the same leader, Mohammed bin Salman, who's super, super ruthless. We say that nothing has changed in the region. You're just going to see the same thing. On our contention too about the fall of Kurdistan, they make a few shoddy responses in the last 20 seconds of his rebuttal, mainly that like Turkey wouldn't enter Iraq. He asked for our evidence on this. Evidence is really clear that the Turkish plan is to flood the region. Then they say that like Turkey fears Iraqi forces, but we're talking about an invasion of Kurdistan. Critically, Kurdistan is an autonomous region, meaning that there are no Iraqi forces there. The only forces in Kurdistan are Kurdish fighters who Turkey views as a threat to their state and have vowed to remove. Our link chain is exceedingly clear, Judge, and they have provided no ink on it. We tell you with our Turek evidence that U.S. withdrawal allows a Turkish incursion into Kurdistan and that the Kurds would not be able to hold out since they're outnumbered. Then we tell you with our Iran evidence that incursion from Turkey into previous Kurdish areas has caused 180,000 people to be displaced and massive ethnic cleansing. We say, Judge, that ethnic cleansing is the most important impact in this round because for the 6 million Turks living in Kurdistan, they have no other way to form a community, and if you remove them, those 6 million people will be at risk of death, as refugee camps in the current coronavirus crisis are almost perceived as a death sentence, according to the UN ambassador. That's super critical because you're risking the lives of 6 million people, as well as ethnically cleansing their culture. It's the biggest impact in this round.
Can you send Bloomberg on the email chain?
Yeah. Sorry, what did Bloomberg say? Which card was that?
Saudi caused Yemen because of lack of U.S. commitment.
Yeah. Kevin, I think you got that right.
Sorry, what did you say? I think you glitched out.
The Saudi turn, the first one you read, that involvement in proxy wars is because of perceived lack of U.S. commitment.
Once we get
Yeah.
that, we'll prep.
Yeah, it's Bloomberg. You're right. Okay. Here, I'm sending it right. Okay, reply all. All right, I just sent it.
All right.
Let me know when you get it.
I got it.
Sounds great.
All right. We'll start prep now.
All right, they are.
Harrison?
Yeah.
We paused prep. You sent us Brands, not Bloomberg. Oh wait, never mind.
Brands is the author. Bloomberg is the site.
Sorry.
Hey, how much prep do you have left?
Yeah, I got you guys' time is up.
We used 30 seconds before. We just used 2, so we have 30 seconds left.
Oh, sorry. Wait. Oh, right, because we had the technical difficulty. Sorry about that.
We're resuming prep starting. That was our prep.
Prep time. AR, make sure you mute yourself on your phone.
I did.
I ended the call back, so whatever. So the order is that we're gonna start on our case on their overview, and after that, I'll signpost. Is everyone good?
Wait, sorry. You said overview. Okay,
On your brands over here, and then I'll signpost.
Sounds good.
All right. Okay. On their overview, they say that the Brand's evidence says that any conflict means that the U.S. is going to re-enter. If you read the Brand's evidence, what it says is that they went back in because ISIS took over 98% of land. Insofar as there's not a major conflict to the scale of ISIS taking over entire countries, there's going to be no reason the U.S. goes in the first place. And the second response also is going to be that there's heavy populism in the United States. They say there isn't because they recite the Soleimani strike, but the Soleimani strike had heavy backlash by people, which also deters Trump further in the future from making any more actions. And also under current contexts, we see that populism is still growing inside the United States. Now let's go to the turn that they read on China. What they don't AR conceded the defense that they cited themselves, which says is that first that the U.S. doesn't have the ability to go into the South China Sea. So their turn that says that the U.S. going in is bad doesn't really matter because the U.S. is never going to go in the first place. And also the limb evidence from our case specifically tells you that this militarization is already happening. So this turn is going to be non-unique because both worlds see some level of militarization and some kind of war going on in the South China Sea. So neither side has any kind of tangible offense off that. Then the place where we can vote most easily is going to be our third contention. What we tell you is that right now, the U.S. emboldens Saudi Arabia by giving them the backing of the number one military in the entire world, which allows Saudi Arabia to start conflicts. But when the U.S. backs away, Saudi Arabia tends to not want to engage in these conflicts as much. And we see this historically as in 2018 when the U.S. when Saudi Arabia perceives less U.S. commitment to Saudi Arabia's war in Yemen, they decrease their bombings by 80% and they started creating ceasefires. We say is that there's 8 other hotspots that can also get triggered due to Saudi Arabian aggression. And the only way you can prevent this is by stopping them from having the incentive to stop some kind of war by taking away the U.S. from the equation. Their response is that they talk about the 2014 war, which says when the U.S. came in, which talked about how a different autocrat, which is not MBS. We tell you specifically is that MBS was elected in 2018, not 2014. So obviously the politics are different. MBS is much more dependent on American politics to develop his systems. And moreover, what we say is even if you don't believe the autocrat differences, we say you can prefer the Northam evidence, which is way more recent. Now, here's why the third contention is going to be a game winner. First, it outweighs their case because it is on magnitude, whereas we tell you is a regional-wide proxy wars that we see 8 other countries being pulled in and killing 500,000 in each one of these proxy wars similar to Syria and Yemen is going to kill way more people and hurt way more people than any kind of impact that they can talk about. Second, what we say is that it also links into any kind of impact that they talk about because we say is that if you see a region-wide war, that is the breeding ground for terrorism. It allows terrorists like ISIS to regrow, but also more terrorists. And moreover, it leaves the Kurds even more vulnerable for other countries to try to take them out. Now, let's go to their second contention where they talk about ISIS and the Kurds. They say is that there's no Kurdish forces whatsoever that are controlled by Iraq. But our response to this is from our first contention, where we tell you, where they tell you themselves, is that if the U.S. pulls out, Iraq is going to take over these Kurdish regions and put their soldiers there. That means Turkey has no space to put in their soldiers in the first place, which means that Turkey doesn't have the ability to try some kind of ethnic cleansing because Iraq is already in control of these Kurdish parts, and then they don't read any kind of impact as to why anything happens with ISIS, so that's not going to be a part of their offense.
All right, you ready for Grand Cross?
Yeah.
May I have the first question? So I want to talk about this argument you go for about Saudi Arabia, right? What we read to you is this Brands and Bloomberg evidence, which basically says that Saudi Arabia the reason that they started the Yemen conflict in the first place
All right.
was because of a perceived like lack of
No,
commitment
what
from the
we're
U.S.
telling you is
You
that
say that it was a different leader, right? That it wasn't Mohammed bin Salman.
Yeah.
Like in the Brands evidence that Kevin sends you, what is the first sentence? It says much
Okay.
of Saudi Arabia's recent behavior has been linked to the rise of MBS. Then you say MBS was elected in 2018.
Okay.
Empirically false. MBS was
It's
elected in
been a while.
2015.
Okay.
What?
First of all, okay.
That's after 2014.
I'm on.
Right?
Okay. So two things, right? First of all, when Brand says recent behavior, that's what Brand was written in 2018. So we talk about like recent behavior 2017. You say MBS was elected in 2015,
Yes.
but the Yemen war started in 2014, meaning that it's a different autocrat with different
That's-
policies.
No.
No.
Okay.
So
No.
the
You don't
first-
understand
the
what our
first-
argument is here, though.
The first Saudi
Like, you're
airstrikes
telling me-
were in 2014. However,
Yeah.
the war started in
They
2015.
did the airstrikes in the war.
Wait, you
because the US wasn't
This
there.
is
Like,
this
once
is a
they do
fact. It's not
airstrikes,
even
it happened
debatable.
in
Mohammed
war.
bin Salman
It
started
wasn't
the Yemen
Mohammed
war.
bin Salman who started the war. The war was started before he came into power.
guys have been saying 2014 this entire round. The
No,
moment it
listen,
comes
listen.
We never said
The
Salman
2014.
was elected after, you guys start switching to 2015. I mean, that's literally just not
Also,
even
I think we should prefer what Saudi Arabia has been doing recently and more recently.
Yes.
And we
I
tell you,
agree.
I'm
That's
not
why
gonna
tell you in
2018
20
has been also provoking.
No,
Like,
no. Yeah, we say
unnecessary.
they were provoking them in 2018 because the US was still there. But in 2019,
No.
when we signaled a bit of disengagement, they literally decreased bombing by
Listen.
80%.
I don't mean to come off as sort of rude, but like the evidence is very clear that the reason why Saudi Arabia was aggressing was because
Those
of
are
the U.S.
old-
presence.
The
Right.
evidence-
All right.
Yes,
Our
right.
argument-
Yeah, I think we've talked about
Wait,
this long enough. I think the
wait,
judge
wait.
should
Let
just
us
call for the
respond.
Brands
Wait,
evidence.
we got to respond. Just let us respond first, right?
You can
Sure.
respond in your speech. Do you have a question?
We'll respond here first, and then we'll talk about it in the speech again.
Well, let's use cross for questions because we
All right,
only have a
so
minute left.
First off,
we prefer what happened in 2019 or 2014.
Do you have a question? We only have a minute left of
That
cross
is
for
my
That was
questions.
our question.
We prefer what happens in 2019 or 2014.
I would say we prefer what's a more similar scenario, and I would say that the Brands evidence is super clear, and I urge the judge to call for it after the round.
How is
You
that
have a
more
question.
similar than ours?
Wait.
That is my
The
question.
judge should just call for both pieces of evidence. It's
All right,
fine.
you-
Why don't we just talk about it here, right?
Let's talk about the overview then, since you guys don't have a question, right? You say that like our overview doesn't talk about how like any slight amount of conflict is enough to re-engage. However, like what I sent to you in the chat when you asked for it was this Quincy evidence that says President Trump himself has indicated that the slightest unrest will provide justification for re-engagement. Slightest unrest.
We
So
didn't
long
ask
as like
for it. We didn't
in this
ask
round
for it.
we're winning like any
Right.
sort of like
Wait,
increase in
we
conflict
saw
in
the
the Middle
population
East.
First of all, we didn't ask for it. Second of all, that's not Brands you sent us. It was Quincy. Third of all, it's talking about the Taliban and Afghanistan, which is not in the Persian Gulf. Don't miscite evidence.
It's not misciting evidence. First of all, the
It's just that-
Taliban interacts in the Persian Gulf. That's just common knowledge.
No, it doesn't. He's talking about the Taliban
The
deal.
Taliban never interacts in the Persian Gulf.
It's because America already withdrew from Afghanistan. He's talking about re-engaging in
You're
Afghanistan.
saying that the Taliban has never conducted any operations in
No,
the
but we
Persian
feel
Gulf.
it's a completely different political
Process
scenario.
30 seconds over.
All right. Is everyone good? Is Judge ready? Judge, are you ready? Should I just start? I don't really know what to do.
Yeah.
All right, I'll just start then. So I'm gonna go
is it-
China turn. What'd you say?
Is it clear that the judge is here and our technology is working?
Yeah, wait. I don't want to start if the judge isn't listening.
Sorry, I should be on your video and I gave a thumbs up. Are y'all not? am I
Oh,
not
okay.
on
We
your
sorry.
video?
Oh, sorry.
For some-
I can only see
It
one
only
person.
shows you when you're talking for some reason.
Oh, okay. There should be
Got
a
it.
way that you can see everybody at once.
Right. Sorry, my
Okay.
computer. Yeah,
No,
it's
that's
okay. I'll just
Okay, that's
start
fine.
on the China turn, then Saudi Arabia, and then finally on Kurdistan. Is everyone good? All right.
This debate is a super clean college prep ballot for 3 reasons. The first is on their China contention. They say the US pullout means we go to China, but what goes cold drop is the Glazer turn, that a pivot to China would trigger massive anti-American sentiment, strengthening Chinese nationalist voices, calling for military countermeasures. They try to randomly respond to this turn in summary. Don't let them do that. It's not allowed in public forum, but also they need to accept the delink in rebuttal in order to delink the turn. They can't just all of a sudden respond in summary. But we would tell you that this is empirically backed up because Claire 13 writes that China retaliated the last time Obama pivoted to the South China Sea. That's when an arms race ensues in the region, which is the only way that war would break out, causing millions of deaths in the region. The reason you buy that is because 1, it's cold drop, and 2, it's the largest magnitude impact in terms of just simply lives. But the only way they can win this debate is off this Saudi Arabian proxy warfare. They say Saudi Arabia will go to conflict less when we pull out the region. But I urge you to call for the Bloomberg evidence that says the reason Saudi Arabia has been aggressing is because of perception that the US is withdrawing slowly from the region. Their analysis is that you should prefer evidence from 2019, but no, you should prefer evidence that has better warranting. And our warranting is very clear that Saudi Arabia thinks that they need to take matters into their own hands when the US isn't on their side. But even if you give them offense that somehow Saudi Arabian proxy warfare is slightly better in their world, to the point where they start a massive arms race in the South China Sea, you vote for us every time. But then on our contention to which is the cleanest place to vote for us, they say Turkey would never go into Iraq, but our evidence is very clear that Turkey would invade Kurdistan if we pull out. But our Turek evidence says that US withdrawal necessitates a Turkish villain in Iraq. They say Turkey would never go into Iraq, but our evidence says they would. If you have questions, just call for evidence. But then on our impact of ethnic cleansing, you're going to prefer this for 2 reasons. The first is on irreversibility. The Kurds are an ethnic group, which means that only one native area of Kurdistan and destroying their homeland and turning an entire ethnic group into refugees is completely irreversible. It doesn't just take out people, but an entire culture forever, as 6 million people can no longer practice traditions and are forced to live in quality of life that's close to a death sentence. But the second is on magnitude, as erasing an identity is the largest scale impact because you remove the culture forever. That's why you prefer impact of silencing 6 million Kurds.
All right, is everyone ready? All right, I'm going to start on China, then their case about the Kurds, and then I'm going to go to my case about Saudi Arabia. Everyone good? All right. Let's start off on China. They read a turn and they say we don't respond to it. That's because they responded to it when they said in rebuttal that America won't shift to the South China Sea. They literally read that as the first response to our case, so we can assume that America is not going to shift to the South China Sea. But in second of all, their impact is rampant militarization. We tell you from the limb evidence from our case that this rampant militarization and Chinese aggression is already happening, so nothing changes inside their world. So I would contend that in the end, China is a non-issue inside today's round. Let's go into their contention too about ISIS and the Kurds and Turkey invading. They're specifically implicating that when the US pulls out of Iraq, Turkey invades the Kurdish regions of Iraq. But we told that they won't do that, specifically from the foreign affairs evidence, which shows that Iran will take over Iraq and fill the US's place once America pulls out, so Turkey still won't be able to enter the region. Their evidence that says Turkey fills in is only specific to Syria because Turkey has never been willing to go into Iraq in the past. That's why they've literally never been there. Then, the way you vote for us is our contention 3 on Saudi Arabia. We tell you from the Bazi evidence that when Saudi Arabia believes that the world's #1 superpower is backing them no matter what, they're going to act arrogantly and become overconfident, causing more wars and more escalation. They give you this one response saying that Saudi Arabia will take matters into their own hands like they did in 2014 with the Yemen war. This is one instance. This was under a different ruler before Mohammed bin Salman came into power, so a different foreign policy. And third of all, it's really old. We should prefer to ignore some evidence which shows you in 2020 that specifically in 2019, after America pulled out a little bit, Saudi Arabia decreased bombing in Yemen by 80% and started engaging with Iran in order to decrease regional proxy wars. And we know there are 8 different hotspots inside the Middle East that can all escalate. You're preferring our evidence on recency and clarity of warranting. We tell you that our case is going to outweigh their case for a very clear reason. Insofar as there are multiple regional proxy wars, this implicates to multiple ethnic groups being wiped out, a lot more people dying, a lot more lives being lost, and could also implicate to Iraq and other Turkish forces as well. We tell you the root reason of all conflict in the Middle East is because of the Saudi Arabian Iranian Cold War, and the only way to end that is to pull America out, create peace in the region. Thus, I strongly urge an affirmative ballot.
Good debate.
Good round.
We'll shake hands like that, I guess.